Hi, my name is Richard Miller, and I'm going to be taking you through this masterclass on developing your capacity through the retrofit projects that you're involved in. So this is the agenda for this session. It's broken into two chunks. When we were doing this live, we had a discussion at the end of each chunk, but here we'll just run straight through. First, the why. Why do we need to learn and build capacity? What stops us from doing that? And then what sort of solutions do we need? Then the second part deals with the tools for learning and capability building, a process of learning before, during and after, using communities of practice, and then thinking of ways of transmitting the learning once you've collected it. So why do we want to learn and build capacity? Well, first of all, you need to make your entire housing stock net zero ready by 2050. That's a commitment you've made, either explicitly or it's in the Climate Change Act. So you'll be working on a lot of projects over the coming years. You want to get better, faster, and more cost-effective with each project. You want to be able to deliver continuous improvement, not to make the same mistakes twice. And you need to develop a team that's skilled and experienced, where everyone knows what they have to do. The problem is that teams very rarely last for long. People are always coming and going, not just in your own internal teams, but in your suppliers and contractors too. You're very lucky if you can have a stable team over a period of years. You'll have bright new starts, excited but unsure what this is all about. Now, the Retrofit Essentials boot camps run by Turner & Townsend can be a great way to give new staff the basics. The idea is that in one day they take you from zero to a good understanding of how a retrofit program gets put together and operated. But for all these reasons, learning and building your team capacity is vital. It's obvious, but we don't do it. Why? Well, first of all, because it is very, very boring. Few people are enthused by the idea of writing a lessons learned report. Nobody goes into these projects which are designed to be exciting about new technology, about upgrading the stock, about delivering more comfort to the tenants, better health outcomes, all kinds of benefits. When you go into a project like that, you're probably not looking forward to writing a report at the end of it. And lessons learned reports are not effective. They're usually done after the project finishes, when everyone has forgotten what they learned. Most end up on the shelf and are never referred to again. Producing one is a pain, and you'll probably get very little thanks for the effort. So it's just not an attractive proposition. And in too many cases, a lessons learned workshop becomes an overblown exercise in arse covering and finger pointing, particularly if there were problems. So most people don't know where to start with learning from projects. It's often seen as a hospital pass, the black spot, something you kind of want to avoid if you possibly can. You don't want to miss the meeting where they decide who's going to sort out the learning from the project. And a key problem is that the project is over. People move on to other projects. They're gone. There are new horizons to explore, new peaks to climb. No one is interested in history. And particularly when people face the pressure of the day job. Many retrofit projects is layered on top of an existing workload. And all that stuff that piled up whilst they were on the project, it's now in their in tray. They have a backlog. They're not interested in more work. So for all these reasons, making sure you learn from projects is not something that comes naturally. And most attempts to do so fail. So what should good solutions look like? They should be simple. There should be a low overhead to create and use the learnings. They should be integrated with the project. Don't make it an add-on activity, make it part of the rhythm of the project. They should be easy to find and use. A chief librarian once told me that once something is properly filed, it is irretrievably lost. And too many learning documents, process documents that come out of projects suffer the same fate. So you've got to make sure, whatever methods you use, that the learnings you've discovered are easy to find and use. They must offer real and immediate value. Value to the team, value to the organization, and value to all the individuals involved. It's got to help people do a better job. And it must be ruthlessly people-focused. The task is to help people deliver better projects, not to answer a philosophical, strategic question about what type of project should we be doing and how should they be organized. This is about helping the individual people deliver better for the future. We're not interested that much in the past. We're interested in what we can deliver for the future. So let's talk about some approaches to making learning work. Some tools, techniques, and methods that are tried and tested, that are known to be successful. And first of all, some ways to capture information without a massive overhead. Now, it's very important that whatever solutions you choose, whatever methods you use, they work with your culture. And you must understand whether you've got a free and easy culture, people can just take the initiative, can take action, can decide what to do, the team is in charge, devolved power. Are you that kind of organization? Or are you a stricter, hierarchical, buttoned-up organization? It makes a difference to how you approach both selling the idea into the organization and actually delivering it. Now, one is not necessarily better than the other. Both these types of organization can have problems with egos, with people looking for someone to blame, people trying to make sure that they're not in the firing line. These problems can occur with any kind of organization. But just make sure that whatever you choose to do, you sell it, you organize it in the way that fits with your organization. And deliver value. How are you going to sell it to the management? How are you going to sell it to the people who have to do the work? What is in it for them? What is in it for the organization? You're going to put effort into this. Hopefully not a huge amount, but you're going to put effort in and people will need a reason. So some of the reasons organizationally are you've got many minds because you're learning from the people who've experienced these kinds of projects. That experience can be fed into the activities within the organization. So the people don't have to reinvent things every time. You've got peer group support. You've got support from people who've done similar projects. And that leads to better problem solving and a faster startup. For the individual, it's personal development opportunity. I remember talking to a surgeon about how does a surgeon learn a new technique? Because you've just got to go out and do it. You can't be in the operating theatre with the instruction book propped open on the abdomen of the patient. And he said, well, there's a standard technique for doing it. If you want to learn a new technique, you watch one, you watch an experienced person doing it, you do one, so you internalize that learning and practice it in real life, and then you teach one. And it's the teach one which actually finally embeds the knowledge in your mind and keeps it there. It's that old story that the best way to understand something is to try and explain it to somebody else. And so there's real opportunity for personal development and skill building for individuals in going through this process of understanding how the project went and what do we learn from it. And of course, there's an opportunity to be a hero. To be the person who found the better way, who showed their peers how to do it. And hopefully it's not extra work, and it can lead to more interesting problems. Because if you're constantly doing rework and wheel spinning and having to go back and fix things that went wrong, you don't have time to tackle the edge problems, which are often the most interesting personally. So make sure that you understand where the value is come and how it's going to make people's life better. So this is a model from BP about how you learn in projects. And BP is a strongly engineering and strongly project-driven organization. They talk about learning before, what they call the peer assist, learning during, the after action review, and learning after the project retrospect. And you can apply these concepts to the whole project, but also to every major component of the project, to every subtask. And linked in are some notes you can download from my website that go into a little bit more detail to help you. So, learning before. What do we already know and who knows it? So, peer assist is about using past experience. You invite people who've done similar projects into a meeting to advise the project during the setup phase. So as an example, an advertising company I worked with, they had a database of every project they'd ever worked on, organized by geography and by topic. And so if the German office came in and said, oh, we've been invited to bid for a project to advertise a new range of football boots, then they were able to say, what projects have we done on football boots? What projects have we done in Germany? Do we understand the market? Who worked on them? Are they still with the organization? If they were, we've got the contact details. We can talk to them about their experience and use that experience. That gets us off to a flying start. It's all about using prior knowledge to allow you to start fast and in the right direction. So how to do a peer assist, some of the ideas. The first thing is obviously to make sure what you want to deliver. You have to be clear what the project is about, so that you can ask the right people the right questions. You need to have the peer assist meeting fairly early on, while you still have time to change your plans. There's no point in inviting people in to advise you when you've got the whole thing scoped out, you've got the business plan written, you've got the delivery plan written, and all that sorted. You need this at the early stage while you, the team, are figuring out what to do. And you invite people who have the right skills and experience to contribute. So I've given you an example of an advertising agency. Another example was a global company that manufactured soap. And it seems a fairly simple thing, but there were differences in terms of the equipment used, the raw materials used, the specific market segments that were sold into. And they wanted to find out ways to do it better. And so they had a specific project about improving the quality and speed of production. And they brought in people from all over the world, from all their different factories, to talk about what the issues were and how you go about solving this problem. So invite the right people. And then the core team who own the problem, they brief the visitors. This is what the project is about. This is our current thinking. The visitors ask questions for clarification, and then the visitors contribute their own experience, learning, and ideas. And the core team listens. The core team then decides what they are going to do. So a key part of this process is that the core team is always in charge. They are the problem owners. They're getting help and support from their peers, but they manage the process and they ultimately decide what pathway they're going to take. So it's entirely to help the team. That's what the visitors are there to do, not to talk about how knowledgeable they are, how many different projects they've done, but to help the team. The next step is the after action review. This is learning during. And the after action review was developed by the US Army to make learning immediate, not something left to the end of an exercise or battle when everyone has forgotten what actually happened. It's done in 15 minutes or less. 5 minutes is good. And it's done as soon as the meeting is over, the milestone is met, whatever. You just stop and you do the after action review. And it's very simple. You take a flip chart, divide it into 4, and you ask these questions. What did we set out to do? What actually happened? Was there a difference, and can we understand why? And then what would we do differently next time? This process is done immediately. It's immediate reaction, front of the mind stuff. No blame, no finger pointing. Any egos are left at the door. Everyone has a voice and everyone will be listened to. It's fast, it's integrated into the project, it's real time, immediate and actionable. And what it does is it builds the learning while the project is going on, and it notes down those critical things. What do we need to change? What worked, what didn't work? What do we learn from that? Instead of leaving it all to the end, you're doing it through the project. And then finally, the project retrospect, summarizing the whole activity. Essentially, this is a bigger after-action review. What were the objectives? What did we actually deliver? What went well and what did not go quite so well? And do we understand why in both cases? And critically, what message would we pass on to the next team to try something like this? And this is the image for me. It's the idea of it's a message in a bottle sent into the future, to your future self, to your future colleagues, to people who are working on similar things. What are the key messages you would send them? Not a whole analysis, not a sort of vast report, but what are the key things you want to tell the next people to try this project, to try this kind of activity? And so it should be short. Maybe 3-4 pages. It's half a day, couple of hours, something like that. And it's done and it's over. So it's immediately after the project finishes, whilst everything is fresh in everyone's mind and before everybody moves on to the next project. So that's learning before, during and after. Another approach can be used to gather information is a community of practice. So what is a community of practice? Well, a team is driven by delivery, defined by tasks, and defined by control. It's a managed process. A community is driven by value, defined by knowledge, and is responsive to requests for support. So a community might be all the people in your organization with a common set of skills, with a particular expertise. If you're in a consortium project, it might be those people from all across the different organizations. And they can be very valuable because a community can help you do some very useful things. You can identify and spread good practice. You can secure knowledge for the organization. One community I worked with, one of their leading lights was about to retire. And the community took responsibility for making a brain dump of that person and capturing the key things that were not already known to the community. They can create important knowledge assets. For example, I used to work for Unilever and they created brand keys for every global brand. They were learning resources for new marketing, brand or regional managers, and other communities joined in. So marketing and consumer research communities added their knowledge to the brand key. What is the brand all about? How do we operate it? And they created a guide for R&D people on how to bring the voice of the consumer into product design and development. So communities can solve problems, they can learn, they can teach, and they're also a key part of the social network. And they need to be a social network, not just an organizational network, because people share with those they know and trust. And communities are the foundation of social capital. So if you have a chance to create and support and strengthen a community of practice, it's a very useful thing to do. And a final memo to managers on communities of practice. Managers need to be very careful. You need to give them space. Communities need to breathe. Managers cannot be managers in a community. They can only participate as peers. And some people find it very hard to do this. They can't stand back. They cannot adopt a humble posture. Bob Buckman of Buckman Laboratories is one of the pioneers of using the technical community to solve customer problems, one of the gurus of knowledge management. And he talked about needing to tread very lightly as the company owner. One day in a discussion, he dismissed an idea in the forum. And he dismissed it because it had been tried a number of years before. He couldn't expect other people to know that. And he knew why it failed, and it was still the situation. So it was a correct answer that this idea wasn't going to fly. But as soon as he dismissed that idea, everyone stopped contributing because the boss was speaking. So you have to be very humble within the community if you're a manager, a senior manager, an owner, more so than any other member. Having captured the learning, you can share it any way that works for you. We talked with the project retrospect of a short document, 3-4 pages, something that's very easy to read, something you can jump to the point of what are the key messages. So a short document on paper or in the computer, filed collectively or in an intranet or whatever. You can have frequently asked questions that build up over time as the different teams gather new understanding of where the problems lie, how to fix them, how to make sure things are working well. Things that can be used to bring new starts up to speed. I'm a great fan of checklists, which are very useful to make sure you don't forget things under pressure. Obviously, we're used to seeing them in aviation and aerospace and space, but they're used all over the place. They're used in the world of medicine to make sure that the team is performing the right procedure on the right part of the right patient. And I'm very grateful that they do that. My hobby is astronomy. Sometimes I'm out 2-3 o'clock in the morning, getting quite tired, operating some quite complicated bits of equipment. So on the exit door from my observatory, there is a checklist to make sure that I've safed everything, I've turned everything off that needs to be turned off, everything is left in a safe situation. And I check that every time because it helps me make sure I don't miss something. So checklists are extremely useful. And people think and learn in different ways, and you should respect that as well. So an extremely useful tool can be short videos of talking heads. I first noticed this working with salespeople at a global conference for an organization, that once they got into the bar after the main session, they just loved telling each other stories. Do you remember when we had that problem with the customer? Boy, I won't do that again. What about old so-and-so? He had a great way of engaging the customer and putting the key points across. Do you remember when he did that? That was just amazing. And these war stories are a great way of picking up some of what appears to be knowledge that people are not even aware of. So you can try that. You can try propping people up in the corner over a coffee and just doing talking heads, asking them about the stories that they picked up in the project. What was the weirdest thing that happened? What was the most difficult problem they solved? What was the thing they were delighted to find was easy? Anything like that. So to wrap up, you have to make learning important to the organization and to the individuals. Otherwise, nobody will find time and resource for it. You have to make it easy. Keep it as low overhead as you possibly can. And so the learning before, during, and after is a good way to do that. But also some of the ideas like telling war stories. It's got to be low overhead. It's got to fit in with the project. It's got to offer immediate value. People need to understand why they're doing it. It's not for a bureaucratic process. It's not for a tick box. It's because it's actually going to help us do better. And do it in real time. Make it part of the rhythm of the project. And then once you've got the information, find the medium that works for you. anything that you're used to, anything that works in your organization, anything that's tried and tested. There are lots of ideas out there, but if you're dealing with small nuggets of information and not vast reports, it becomes very easy to find a way of slipping it in to the way that you routinely exchange information. So thank you very much. You can follow up either with me if there's something specific about this presentation, or with the social housing retrofit team. Thank you for your attention.